If you're someone who knows what you need to do, but you're still not taking action, this episode is for you. Most people think they have a motivation problem, when in all reality, they have a clarity and momentum problem. Life gets too busy. You have your business, you have your family, you have all these things that are requiring more of you. And so when you start pouring into that category and you lose focus on yourself, your fitness, your health, the things that you need to do for you, it's easy to drift. And so you end up in this spot where you're pouring from an empty cup and you do not have enough clarity, focus, and meaning behind what you're going after to follow through. And so today, what we want to really cover is, first, what is motivation? How do you define your target so you can consistently move towards it? And then what are the behaviors that you have to consistently put in place to get that momentum, to get that spark, and to really show up and lead yourself well again? We're going to walk through a simple 3-step framework that we lead all of our clients through at the Fitness Project so you can have clarity on your target, you can define the purpose on why you're attacking it, and third, you have initiation rituals that will allow you to get into action without needing motivation to get there. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Brian Pickowitz. I'm one of the head coaches and co-founders here at the Fitness Project, where we focus on helping business owners and executives who are burnt out and not taking care of themselves become fit, healthy leaders, meaning that they're leading themselves again. They're taking care of themselves in a way that allows them to have more energy, more focus, and more confidence. And so for the last decade, we've helped over 1,000 clients make that transformation, and we do it by actually coaching them on what matters instead of telling them exactly what to do. And when I say coaching on what matters, we think about motivation. Motivation isn't just a feeling. It's a byproduct of having clarity first. And so today I'm going to walk through a simple 3-step framework that will allow you to get clarity, to ignite your purpose, and also to define some of the initiation rituals or initiation behaviors that allow you to start taking action even when you don't feel like it. Now, when we talk about motivation, the first thing we have to define is, what is motivation? Most people will say, well, I just need to have more motivation, but they don't actually know what that means. And so when we think about motivation is the byproduct of knowing what you want, why you want it, and then consistently taking action to move forward towards that target. If you've ever been in a situation where you're reaching towards a big goal, sometimes it might feel insurmountable. And so what you find is that if you know what the target is and you understand why you're pursuing it, and then you start taking action and move towards it, you start to get that feeling of momentum. And for a lot of you, you've probably had momentum in the past in this category of fitness and health. And maybe you've been really successful, but then you drifted. And if you do not know what you're after and why you're after it, and you do not have a sustainable path to get there, it's really hard to sustain that motivation. And so when I think of motivation really means you have a desire to engage in a certain behavior. You can think of it as a motive to take action. And so when we think of motivation, we have to understand what actually compels us as a human to move forward. And there's really 2 key drivers. The first driver is the desire to receive pleasure, the desire to obtain something that we find desirable, right? And so you can think of that as, well, I want to lose 50 pounds because I will look a certain way or I'll feel a certain way, right? That's the desire to move towards something. You think of that as towards motivation. But in all reality, towards motivation is not nearly as compelling as away from motivation, which is really the desire to avoid pain. Oftentimes, we do not articulate the pain because we don't want to go there. But we're far more driven to avoid pain than we are to receive pleasure. And so I'm going to come back to this later on, but I just want you to think, what am I going to miss out on if I do not take action? What might it cost me? If we do not have clarity on the cost of staying where we are, it's highly unlikely that we're actually going to change, at least not in the long run. And so when I sit down with a client, the first thing I have to do in order to help them, in order to serve them, in order to guide them, is I have to actually know what they want. And so the first part of this framework is all about clarity. And you can ask yourself a simple question right now. What is it that I actually want? What is it that I'm actually wanting to obtain? The simplest way to look at this is, what do you want to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months? And I would encourage you, as you're watching this, to either grab a piece of paper and a pen, or even pull up your phone and pull up some notes so you can actually take notes on this and start thinking for yourself. Because if we don't know what we're aiming at, if we don't know the target, we're never going to hit it. I oftentimes tell clients, you'll never hit a target that you fail to set. So if you do not set a target, if you don't create an aim, you're not going to have motivation because you don't know where you're going, right? If we go back to the Bible, if you're not religious, in Proverbs, it teaches us that without a vision, the people perish. Because if you don't know where you're going, you can't lead yourself there, and you certainly can't lead other people there. How many people in your business, if they don't know their revenue targets, they don't know their KPIs, they don't know where the business is going, they're not going to follow you. It's the same thing with yourself. And so what we want to start with in this 3-part framework is really getting clarity. And so I want you to do right now is ask yourself the question, where do I want to be in the next 6 to 12 months? Set a 6 to 12 month goal instead of a 30-day goal or a by the end of summer goal. Those are fine, but we want to take the big target and break it down to something smaller. And for some of you, it might even be more helpful to extend the time horizon. Where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years? Or if you're a little bit younger like me, I'm 32 now, where do I want to be in my 60s? Where do I ideally want to be in my 70s? Even though I can't control everything, what's the ultimate vision for your life? What do you want to look like? What do you want to feel like? What do you want to be able to experience because you're healthy? Everything starts with clarity. And so for me, just using myself as an example, I'm 32. My short-term goal is to maintain a certain percentage of body fat and a certain percentage of strength. But Lindsay and I are also having our first kid. And so for me, I know that my kids won't be athletic until, let's say, they're 12, 15. And I was always a great athlete. So I want to be able to show them how to be a great athlete too, which means that I got 15 years ahead of me. I got to maintain a pretty athletic life to be able to impart those lessons and to be able to contribute to them. So I'm always thinking, okay, in 15 years, so long as, life works in my favor, right? I can't control everything, but this is ideally where I want to be. I want to be able to still be able to run and jump and throw and do all those things as an athlete. Okay, so how do I have to behave, right? That's my target. That's what I'm going after. And so for yourself, take a moment and think, what do I really want to accomplish? How do I want to look? How do I want to feel? What do I want to be able to experience in my life? Is it being able to travel and not be in pain and hold the group back? Is it the ability to hike and enjoy yourself? It's just the ability to sit with yourself for a moment and feel at peace because you have your health. Really important that we have clarity first. And so if we have clarity, the second thing we need is meaning. It's purpose. It's the reason why we're following through. If you don't know why you're doing something, you're not going to persist on the hard days. Having a purpose is just as important as having a goal because purpose is what moves us on the challenging days. Right? There's a great quote from Nietzsche, "He who has a why can endure anyhow." And so if you don't have a clear reason why you're doing this, well, when you're given the opportunity to rest or given the opportunity that hey, it's going to be a little uncomfortable for me to do this, but I'm going to keep going. If you don't have that purpose, you're going to default to your comfort. I was talking to a client of ours yesterday, actually, and I think this actually would land really well for a lot of you. I was like, hey man, you're actually in the beginning of the process. You've been doing this for 2 months now. You're making subtle changes to your behavior, but you have to remember, you've been like this for years. So you have to stay patient. And he was sarcastic. He's like, patience isn't in my vocabulary. I say, okay, well, maybe it's persistence, which means you have to understand why you're doing this. Persistence is what's going to allow you to follow through. But if you do not have a purpose, persistence is not going to show up. And so let's dig into your purpose right now. What I want you to think of is, why is it important that I actually accomplish this goal? So you thought your 6 to 12 month goal, or maybe your 5 to 10 year goal, why is it a must? What's the purpose? What makes it meaningful? I always ask clients, how is it going to impact your business? How is it going to impact your family? How's it going to impact your relationship? How's it going to impact your joy or the things you love? So for yourself right now, ask, like, how is it really going to impact my quality of life if I accomplish this goal? What's the meaning there? And I talked about this earlier, but we're going to come back to it. What would it cost you to miss out on this? So if you understand your purpose, like, hey, I'll make more revenue, or I'll be a better dad, or I'll be a better mother, or, I'll feel better in my body so I can connect more intimately with my partner because I'm not self-conscious. Awesome, that's your purpose. But then what's the pain? What's the pain? What will it cost you to miss out on this goal? What are the consequences of being stuck for another 6 to 12 months? What will it cost you if you do not move forward? Not if you're not perfect, right? You might miss the goal. Like, there's plenty of goals in my life. When I set my first bodybuilding goal, I had to lose 60 pounds in order to compete. And so I'd never lost 60 pounds before. It was an incredibly big goal, and I never stepped on a bodybuilding stage, so I didn't know. So I said, well, I can do that in like 4 months, 4 or 5 months. Okay, I got to 4 or 5 months. I was like, actually, I need another 3 months. Okay, actually, I need another 2 months. So I kept kind of stretching out the time, let's say time horizon, the time allotment towards the goal, because I realized, hey, it was actually going to take me a little bit longer. Totally fine, but I had a purpose. I had a reason to do it. And so for yourself, what might you miss out on? What would it feel like to be stuck for another year? How would it impact your family? How would it impact your business? What are the consequences to your health? What are the things that are going to suffer, or the people who are going to suffer because you don't take care of yourself? I actually love it when I hear a client come in and they say, actually, I was a caregiver for years for my parents, and I have kids now, and I do not want them to go through what I went through, so it's really important I take care of myself. That's a beautiful picture. That's really meaningful. And so you see how someone who has that meaning, has that purpose, it's easier for them to follow through, even if they're off track, even if they're failing. So what I want you to do right now is you probably have your goal, right? And if you don't, you can go back and write it down, but write it down. I want you to ask yourself, what's the purpose? What's the benefit to my business, my wealth, my family, my relationship if I accomplish it? And then let's get a little pain, because pain is what's going to drive you more consistently than anything else. What might it cost you? What are the consequences of not engaging in this behavior? What are the consequences to you, not just in the short run, but in the long run? Yeah, you might still be uncomfortable. You might not fit good in your clothes. Maybe you still feel like garbage in the short run, but maybe in the long run, there's some real consequences. So think on that. Think on that. And if you need to, you could pause the video and then come back. But I just want you to get clear on that purpose, because without it, the goal doesn't matter and you won't follow through. And so if the first part of the framework is clarity, if the second part is purpose, what's the third part? Well, I like to call this initiation. Oftentimes, when we are pursuing a goal, we can have all the motivation, you can have all the desire to change, but then reality sets in and you get tired, right? You get tired, you just have a long day, and the last thing you want to do is go work out. Trust me, I have those days myself. And so what do we do when we have a clear goal, we have a clear purpose, but we're still not feeling like taking action? That's where what I like to call initiation rituals are so key. So all that an initiation ritual is a small behavior that gets you to move towards your bigger behavior. You can think of it like this. Imagine you've had a long day at work and you know you need to work out, but oh my God, I'm just so tired. Well, if you are waiting for a feeling to come to spark you into motivation, to drive you forward, you're going to be waiting for a long time. So either you can think yourself there, which is, okay, well, what is my goal? Why is it important? Or you can move yourself there. And so what I always tell clients is use the 60-second rule. The 60-second rule is pick a behavior that you can engage in 60 seconds or less that gets you to start moving towards your target. Now, the reason why this is so important is because movement creates dopamine. Physiologically, when we start to move, our body creates dopamine, not just from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint too, because we start to see, okay, we're moving towards our goal. And that creates this anticipation of a reward. It starts to engage your brain's natural reward system. And so if I can start getting into motion, I'll start feeling like engaging in other behaviors. The one that I typically use is if I don't want to work out, I put on my gym clothes. It takes me about 30 seconds to change, but it's like, okay, I don't want to work out today. The first thing I have to do is I have to put on my gym clothes. And that starts to train my brain to say, okay, hey, you're committed to this. For some of you, it might just be go to the gym. Sometimes for myself, even so if you think of an initiation ritual, that would be sit in your car. Sometimes the first thing I do is I'll change my clothes. I'm still not feeling it. Got to get into the car. And then while I'm driving to the gym, which takes me about 7 minutes, I start thinking about how I'm going to feel after the workout's done. I start rehearsing, like, how are you going to feel after you're done? I might even put on a song that puts me in state, right? For me, it's either Van Halen right now, that's what I'm really digging, or it might be my workout playlist, which is like more hard rock, heavy metal, like it gets me going. You have to find the small micro behaviors that get you momentum. Another example of a great initiation ritual would be something like, let's say you don't want to cook healthy food that night. Oh my God, it just has such a long day. The last thing I want to do is cook. Well, hey, maybe I'm going to take out the chicken from the fridge and I'm going to put it on the counter. Now I'm kind of mentally committed to this. All right, well then once I've done that, it took me 10 seconds. What's the next thing? Well, I got to turn on the oven. These are small behaviors that start shifting you towards your ultimate goal. And so when you're thinking of, I got to do a 60-minute workout, or I have to bake the chicken, or I got to cook dinner, or, oh my gosh, it's going to take me so much time. Last thing I would much rather not. What you have to do is you have to pick something small that gets you into state, that gets you into the behavior, that gets you moving forward. And the most important piece here is remembering that you do not have to feel like taking action to take action. If you're a successful person, which if you're watching this, I know you are, you have done things in your life that were uncomfortable, that required you to move through the resistance to get to the goal. You have to apply that same thing here. Now, the challenge is it shows up every day, right? Because you're eating a certain way. Now you're trying to change it. That's hard. You're trying to work out. Oh, I've never worked out before. You have to find the small behaviors that get you into state. And I think the most important lesson about motivation is you have to break up with your feelings for a little bit. You have to train yourself to be less dependent on feeling like it than you currently are. And I think that part of that is recognizing that just because you don't feel like it doesn't mean you shouldn't take action. So many times we think, oh my God, I just don't have motivation. I'm not going to do it. It's like, no, the sign that I do not want to do this is not a prerequisite for me not doing it. I have to get myself in motion. I have to get myself to take action when I don't feel like it. That is actually one of the keys to being successful in any endeavor. I heard a great quote recently, which is something akin to, your level of success in life will be predicated on your ability to overcome discomfort, overcome uncomfortable emotions. In order to get what you want, you have to be willing to push through that discomfort. So that's all you have to do. You have to remind yourself, like, hey, what's my goal? What's my vision? Why is it important? What happens if I don't do this? Okay, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to get going. And so a lot of times, what I find to be helpful is that initiation ritual, initiation behavior, is just shifting my focus. Because when you're not motivated, it's because you're focusing on how you're feeling. You're focusing on the story too much about how you do not feel like taking action. And then you're beating yourself up, right? You're beating yourself up because you're telling yourself, oh my God, it should be easy. Well, who said? Who said this is going to be easy? The people who said it was going to be easy were lying to you. I've accomplished a tremendous amount in my fitness in my life. When I was in my 20s, I body built. In my later half of my 20s, I went and ran marathons and ultra marathons. In this season of life, I focus on just maintaining a certain caliber of fitness and health. So I work out 3 or 4 times a week. I make sure I get at least 5,000 steps. Most important thing for me is sleep, because I know that if I don't sleep, I have a thyroid condition. It will throw off my body. So, hey, it's a little bit simpler now, but those times when I was training, even now, it was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It's so hard. It's like, hey, what's your commitment? What's your vision? What's your goal? Why are you doing this? And so if you're listening to this now, you should have a clear target. What's your goal? 6 to 12 months, maybe 5 years. Think of that target and then break it down to, hey, where do I need to be over the next 30 days? What's the target now? Then you should also have purpose, more compelling reason. You should have clarity on why it's important, why you have to follow through, what are the costs of not taking action. And yeah, you do probably need a more strategic approach to lose the weight or to gain the muscle or to reach your goal. And obviously, yeah, you might need to hire a coach. You might need to bring someone on your team to give you that blueprint, but you can always start taking action now. So what are your initiation rituals? Is it putting on your shoes? Is it putting on your gym clothes? Is it stepping on the treadmill? Is it getting in the car and driving to the gym? What is it for you? What are the small behaviors that you can use to train your brain to say, hey, we're going in that direction? And then what's great is once you do it, you celebrate, right? Because if you don't celebrate, your brain doesn't receive the reward. So every time you take action against that friction, remind yourself that you are becoming someone who is taking care of themselves. You're becoming a fit and healthy person, and that's the greatest reward overall. So I hope this is helpful. Let me know in the comment section, what's your goal? What's your purpose? What are you gonna do going forward? And if you ever lose track, come back to it. What's my goal? What's my purpose? What am I doing to take action? And how can I get momentum right now? So thank you so much for being here. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And I hope you take this and go out and conquer your day. Cheers.